got some games.
Got some games to talk about.
Theoretically getting better. Or maybe not. Maybe games are just downhill. Maybe we are just on a downhill slope. We've hit into an eternal abyss.
We've hit our peak for downhill. It's the end. I was talking to a buddy over the phone, kind of the guy who he stood in as my father role. Mm-hmm. We were talking, and he was saying that in his gaming group, one of his gaming groups, they always get the new Kickstarter, and they're always Cult of the New, huge. So he likes being a part of that group because he just gets to kind of tag along, and so he plays a lot of the new stuff without having to get it himself and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But in that group, there's a conversation that's starting about, is this, have we surpassed the golden age of board games? We used to talk about the golden age of board games. Board games are unlike anything they've ever been. Mm-hmm. And now we're into something else. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting question to have.
Right.
So we're going to talk about that.
Nice.
So we're going to see how that goes.
I love it.
What's happening, party people? Welcome to Punch Board Party. My name is Daniel. This is Father Greg. And we're having another discussion. Our discussion about baggies and inserts and game trays went pretty well. Lots of people had lots of things to say about that topic. And so we just wanted to keep the conversation train going. And I thought that, why don't we just pick a really controversial conversation that's at the center of our hobby?
Sure.
Have we jumped the shark? Have we, as a hobby, gone past the point of no return in terms of all of the best board games have already been published? All the best designs have been thought of, put into print, on shelves, played, and now we are just recycling. Mm-hmm. And we aren't really doing anything new or innovative to the degree that we would say that we're actually getting better. Right. Or that the hobby is actually evolving. Party people, this is for you to engage in the comments below. Do you think our hobby is on the down curve? Or do we still have a ways to go up? Are great games still coming our way?
Right.
Is the best yet to come? Mm-hmm. I hope that's true.
Right.
But I'm getting more and more suspicious. Mm-hmm. I'll just kind of intro this conversation.
Right.
With a game we played recently. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we played Padoku.
Yeah. Did we ever?
How was that for you, Father Greg?
It was less than ideal, but there could be a lot of factors that played into that. But I think it's an okay game. There's just some problems I have with it, but that's
right.
Yeah, it's a little murky. Murky is how I do describe that game.
Father Greg had a really long week.
Sure.
And he showed up at Dave's house, and we had Padoku all set up and ready to go, and his brain space was not there.
Probably still isn't.
And we got into it, and if you want to see a grumpy Father Greg, you just want to zoom in on that night. That was peak. Dave and I didn't think we were going to get through that night alive, I think. But we did. We did. And it was good. But here's the thing. Why I bring it up is that Padoku is accused of, if you read through the Board Game Geek comments on Padoku, a lot of what is said about it is either this is really great, but it's nothing new, but it's put together really well, and the combos that you're forced to create are just really thrilling. That's kind of the main sort of heartbeat of the positive comments. Right. And the negative comments have the same kind of base point of, there's nothing new brought to the table, and it's just too much tried to be cobbled together for what purpose? So it's either all these things you've seen before have been put together in a really nice combo-tastic way, or all these things you've seen before have been put together and it's just a mess.
Right.
So those are the two kind of main through lines you see about Padoku. And so this kind of brings the point up, are we just seeing the same things over and over again? And if we are seeing the same things over and over again, does that mean that we've reached the peak of the hobby? Mm-hmm. Or is slight variation improvement?
Right.
Or is it a sign of we're kind of coasting now? Mm-hmm. So another thing that I wanted to bring to the table on this was the new game. I haven't played it yet. I really want to, but I've watched some playthroughs and kind of getting into it. I'll be able to buy a copy pretty soon here. But Earth.
Okay.
And so Earth came out, and here's where we're at. Is more often than not right now, the new game gets released, that in the comments on Board Game Geek, there's other games' names associated
Right.
with that game in the comments than not.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost rare now that I see a game come out where other games aren't mentioned in the same breath as
Right.
it.
Oh, you like this? Oh, this game, it sounds like Seven Wonders. Oh,
Yes.
this game sounds like...
Yes. So like Earth comes out, and all of a sudden people are like, oh, Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. Oh, Wingspan.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Ark Nova. And so it's like, this has been done before. Ark Nova came out, and everyone was like, oh, Terraforming Mars. Oh, Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. Like, so all of a sudden what we're into now is we're not creating, it seems like, we're not creating board games that are in and of themselves kind of new contributions to the hobby. We're taking the best of the hobby, and we're distilling that even more to try and make it better. Now, so here's the argument on the flip side that we might be going up still in the hobby, is that I would argue that Ark Nova is a better distillation of Terraforming Mars.
Right, yep.
Like, I'm going to play Ark Nova over Terraforming Mars any day of the week. So I think it took some of the core concepts of Terraforming Mars, added a good chunk of its own thing,
Right.
and created something that is a top tier game that I think deserves the love and adulation that it gets. So there is an argument to be made, but then I still have the sneaking suspicion of if it wasn't for Terraforming Mars, we wouldn't have Ark Nova. So is it a vertical move or is it a lateral move in terms of development in the hobby?
Right.
And so, Father Greg, where are you at on this?
So, a while ago, I think maybe it was like 2011, no, 2021, something like that. The Dice Tower did like a decade of games. Like they went over like the top 100 from like 2011, 2012, 2013,
Okay.
2014, something like that. I think it was probably for 2020, like the millennia,
Right.
the decade or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I kind of like with them sort of went over like my own lists, and I was like looking at the games and like trying to like name like which year I thought was the best, like over the past decade. And for me, like I really found like 2013 to like 2015, 16, like there were some magical games that came out in those years. And like, yeah, a lot of the games that I still really, really enjoy to this day, where like a lot of them were in that kind of that bulk. So that's one way of looking at the discussion, is just
Yes.
like looking at, overall, just a general kind of like, not just what is your top game and what year was it made, but like looking at just like the overall quality of like looking at the whole of what 2021 had to offer, looking at what the whole of 2022 had to offer, and just kind of seeing if you're like more excited about recent years or less. I think COVID had a big part to play in that to a certain degree, especially recently, in that like there was just a lot of games that were really delayed. And so, like, I lost interest in them. And so, like, when they did come out, I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm kind of excited about this.
Right.
But maybe didn't have that same love for that game that I once had. So that's something that potentially could turn around. I do think the other side, though, is to think of, like, innovation in games. Mm-hmm. So I think of, like, Dominion. Now, maybe some people will say, what's the one that arguably came before Dominion? Fantasy, Fairy Tale. Didn't Fairy Tale?
Fairy Tale is drafting.
Oh, drafting.
Yeah.
That was Seven Wonders,
Sorry,
right?
yes.
So, yeah, like, whatever. But, like, yeah, that when Fairy Tale came out or Seven Wonders came out, it was like, this is, like, the first drafting game. And that was like, what? What? Yeah. This is crazy.
Yes.
And, like, Dominion came out. I was like, this is the first deck building game. And everyone was like, whoa, what? You have to build. This is crazy.
Yes.
And so I don't know that I've seen like a mechanic like that recently where I've been like, oh, I see this changes the board game arena drastically. I've seen some innovative things happen in board games that haven't always worked out great, but I've thought to myself like, maybe somebody could rework this and make it better, and then so maybe
it's that game changer to come, maybe.
That's right. Like that, there's that potential of like somebody looking at maybe Fairy Tale wasn't the ideal card drafter, but like Seven Wonders, I don't know if they saw Fairy Tale, but whatever. Like they came after and they were like, yeah, we've really hit the head on the nail,
Yeah. Because this is the argument to be made, right? Is that all through the hobby, from when it really started to gain traction up, we have these watershed moments of games, right? So we have our Catan, we have our Dominion, we have our Carcassonne, or Catan, Carcassonne, Dominion, and then Seven Wonders. And then we start going, but eventually what starts to happen is that those watershed games start to sort of look a little more close, because I would say like our more contemporary watershed games are things like Brass. So I think that stands on its own, but that's like happened and it kind of got lost almost in the Euro scene, and then it was brought back with Roxley, and then it just kind of Brass was always rated highly, but I think it got a new life, and
for sure.
So that's an example of kind of an outlier where it's like, okay, that's something all on its own. Like Brass is its own thing,
right?
It's like, but it's an older design, right? Just kind of reworked a little bit. But then you start to get things like Terraforming Mars, Wingspan, Everdell. I say that these are all like benchmark games in the hobby, but they all start to share traits.
Right.
You're not as able to differentiate like you are. Like Dominion is distinct from Seven Wonders, is distinct from Carcassonne, is distinct from Splendor even.
Right.
But then you start to get a little more recent than that, and it's like, if someone says, "Hey, I really like Everdell," it's really easy for me to say Wingspan, Terraforming Mars. Like they're very close in move. So that's where I start to believe that we're running out of juice. Our leaps are getting shorter,
right,
between the innovations of the designs. And so I'm like curious about that. But then you have like Pandemic Legacy, which of course piggybacks off of Risk Legacy or whatever. But like you have kind of this like explosion of whoa, that's different, and then you just sort of have many iterations of that. Now again, when a new thing comes, lots of good games come out of that innovative mechanism. And yes, they're just borrowing that mechanism, but they're doing it in different ways. And so then the whole argument to be made for, yes, this is everything we've seen before, but just put together in a really good way. There's room for those kind of games. I do think that those kind of games do bring the hobby forward. However, I think to say that we're still on the upswing in the hobby, we need a kind of back and forth between those two dynamics. We need new innovations, and we need the amalgamations of the new innovations. And we just need to keep going that way. And I fear that we're just one-sided now.
Right.
We're just reusing the innovations in creative ways.
Right.
And we've stopped innovating.
Yeah, like I feel like there are attempts, like I think a lot of games are trying to do things with like apps nowadays, or like, involving some kind of electronic component or something, maybe to be like innovative. And there are some neat designs. I remember like there was a World of Yoho or something like that. That like had like your phone, like But I remember like I don't know the game was that good. I never played it, but like I remember that concept being like, whoa, okay, that could be a game changer. Now it wasn't, at least it hasn't yet become one, but like there's that possibility of like, oh, I wonder if another game could kind of borrow from that and make it better, right? And become like a new really cool thing.
So the other side of the coin, though, is that the argument that we're kind of going downhill in terms of board game design nowadays hinges on the same stuff being reused in creative ways being a bad thing. If you don't think that's a bad thing, then we're doing great.
Right.
We're coming up with all sorts of new stuff. And like the fact that Arcanova comes out in 2022 and is at number 4 on the Board Game Geek hotness, there's enough people out there that believe that we're still making new best games.
Right.
Like the 4th best game of all time, according to all BGG users, is a game from 2022.
Right.
So maybe we're all right. But it is Terraforming Mars 2.0.
Right, so I don't think there's a problem with like refining something that's good, like taking Carcassonne and be like, Carcassonne's an amazing game. Let's make it better.
That's right.
And so that can still be. I don't think that's a knock on the hobby to say, if somebody says to me, oh, this game's like Carcassonne, I'm gonna be like, oh, cool.
Yes.
I don't think, so it's been done before.
That's right.
I'm like, oh no, great, I love Carcassonne. I'm game. Tile placement, yes, baby.
That's right.
Like,
But there are a lot of comments online that are that like, this is just that.
Right.
And so that's interesting because it's like, maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe we're fine. Maybe it's good. But I still do hope for a cool innovation in the hobby. I kind of hope that I can come up with an innovation in the hobby and make something really cool. But because you think about it, right? And before deck building, Dominion style deck building, before that existed, there was all sorts of great games. And then that came in, and like that's a very simple idea. Like it's not a complicated idea, but it's just like a little like out there. Like you just kind of have to say, well, what if your hand of cards grew throughout the game? Like, and you did that by adding cards to your deck and da-da-da. Yeah, simple uses everything else. So like, is there something just out of our sight like that was in 2009? Right. Is there something just outside of our sight where we have all the pieces of it, but nobody's like, you know, just their vision hasn't coalesced on that new thing, but all the pieces are there. Because we had cards. We had adding cards to your deck in Magic the Gathering. We had all the pieces. Right. It was just then someone said, well, what if in a half-hour game you grew your deck? Sweet. So I'm like, what's the thing? So I'm just hopeful that there's something that will blow our minds and we'll be like, okay, we're back. We're back
That's
to
right.
cool thing.
If we are on a decline, it's a slow decline. You know, if it's not like we're falling off a cliff here, but you know, there's still a lot of fun to be had in the hobby.
There is. I think what a lot of gamers are feeling though potentially is just when they buy a new game, they're not experiencing the same high that they did when they played whatever game they're thinking about that gave them the biggest high that they've gotten 5 years ago or whatever it was for them. And that might not be the game's fault. That might be the fact that you're just strung out on board games. Right. and you need to take a little bit of a breather and just like realize that this stuff is still cool and like reinvigorate your joy. I don't know. I do know still that I'm having really great experiences with the new games I'm playing. So circling back to finish up this conversation with Padoku, I really, really, really love Padoku. It makes me feel beautiful things. I just love what it does. It gives me that feeling of just like the feeling that I expect to feel when I play a new board game and enjoy it. Padoku gives me that feeling. Are there games that are better than Padoku? Yes. Are there games that, like, is it the pinnacle of board game design? No. Is it an amalgam hodgepodge mess?
Yes. No, yeah, it just is, yeah.
No, it's really...
Stay tuned for our next video.
Yeah, that's right.
Or last video. Who knows what order these are coming in.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know what order we put these in. So, party people, what do you think? What are you saying about this? Are we in kind of a time where, like, the best games have come and gone? Or is there still a bright future ahead of us in the hobby? Any last comments on this?
No, I'm game. I'm excited to see what happens.
In the future. In the future! Alright, party people, please, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel, please like the video, share the video with people you think might like it as well. And until next time, party people.
Have a futuristic day.
Darn tootin'.